After our family's Thanksgiving celebration, I dragged myself back to my Boston apartment, completely drained. Everything seemed fine until I opened my banking app to pay the electric bill. My vision blurred at the number on screen, $83.52. I checked it repeatedly, certain my exhausted eyes were playing tricks. Just 2 days ago, I had over $70,000 in that account, my decade-long savings for opening my own architecture firm. My blood ran cold as my heart hammered against my ribs. With trembling fingers, I called the bank immediately. After verifying my identity, the representative said, the transactions were made from a previously authorized device, matching your mother's home IP address. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to my parents' house, the same place that had just hosted our Thanksgiving dinner. The images of everyone embracing and laughing still fresh in my mind contrasted sharply with the hollow feeling in my chest. As I stood in the familiar kitchen reaching for water, my heart still racing with shock, I heard my sister's voice. "Back so soon, Vanessa?" Lizzie called from the living room, sounding carefree. She lounged on the couch, legs crossed, wine glass in hand, surrounded by shopping bags from luxury stores. "I just checked my account," I managed, my voice strained with suppressed emotion. Nathan emerged from the kitchen with a beer. He leaned against the refrigerator with a dismissive smirk. "Oh, that," he said. "We needed that money more than you did." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood frozen, unable to speak as waves of betrayal washed over me. Lizzie laughed softly. "Don't be so dramatic," she said, opening a designer box. "You've got that fancy job at the architecture firm. No kids, no debt. You live alone." I turned to my mother. Eleanor sat knitting in her chair, expression unchanged. "Mom, did you know about this?" My voice cracked with disbelief. She sighed without looking up. "Vanessa, you've always been too sensitive. You earn good money. What's wrong with helping family a little?" I turned to my father, who was fixated on his phone. Richard mumbled, "Don't make a scene. This is family business." "How did you even access my account?" I demanded, my whole body trembling. Lizzie shrugged. "You left your password in Mom's computer. We're family, aren't we?" She spoke as if I were the one being unreasonable. In the corner, Sophie played with a new iPad while Max unwrapped expensive toys. Nathan waved dismissively. "It's not like we bought anything frivolous. Just necessities." I looked at each of them, searching for remorse or guilt but finding none. "That was 10 years of my dream," I whispered, my voice breaking. Lizzie tossed her hair. "You'll earn it back. You always do." I grabbed my purse, my nails digging into the leather. No one moved to stop me. Eleanor merely called, "Don't forget Sunday dinner." At the doorway, I paused and looked back, a new resolve hardening inside me. "If you think I'm just going to let this go, wait and see what happens next." Lizzie giggled. "Oh please, so theatrical. Honestly, Vanessa, we needed it more than you. Don't be selfish." I didn't respond. Outside, rain was beginning to fall, and inside me, another storm was quietly building. I drove through the downpour, knuckles white on the steering wheel. The traffic light glowed red through the rain-streaked windshield, but my mind echoed with those icy words, "We needed that money more than you." No remorse. No apology. This wasn't just a bad dream I could shake off. Needing space to breathe, I pulled into Boston Public Gardens parking lot where I often sketch on weekend mornings. I killed the engine and reopened my banking app. The balance stared back at me, as cold and unfeeling as Lizzie's eyes. I wasn't entirely surprised. At 27, I'd landed my first major position at Bennett Architecture. While still finding my footing, Lizzie sent an urgent text, "Sophie has a fever and our insurance lapsed. Please help." I transferred the money without hesitation. They were family, right? Then came Nathan, unemployed for 6 months. "Just need to cover rent until I find something," he claimed. For Sophie's 8th birthday, Lizzie sent a suggestion list where nothing cost less than $200. When I hesitated, Mom called, "Nothing for your niece? You're the successful one in the family." I became their financial safety net. Lizzie needed a new car. I contributed to the down payment. Nathan lost his wallet. Emergency wire transfer. Mom's utilities overdue? I dipped into my savings. Their justification was always the same, "You're the stable one, Vanessa." Not once did they ask if I was okay or notice when I counted every penny, skipped vacations, or postponed buying professional books I needed. Last month, I canceled a crucial architectural conference because I'd helped Nathan with rent instead. The cruel irony struck me, they used my reliability as a weapon. It wasn't gratitude they felt, but entitlement. I wasn't their daughter or sister, just an ATM with a heartbeat. My phone lit up with a text from Eleanor. Lizzie says you're upset about the money. Don't make this difficult, sweetheart. We're family. Family. The word felt hollow now. I'd believed if I remained generous enough, they'd eventually appreciate it. But they never did because in their eyes, I didn't need help, I just needed to help everyone else. I opened my design portfolio app instead of my notes. The custom playhouse I'd designed for Sophie, the kitchen renovation I'd planned for Mom's birthday, tangible proof of love they'd never valued. This time, I was investing that care in myself. As rain softened to mist, weak sunlight broke through clouds. I straightened my shoulders, hands firmly on the wheel. This time, I wasn't looking back. I returned to my apartment that night, Nathan's entitled words still ringing in my ears. We needed that money more than you. No apology, no explanation, just pure, unapologetic entitlement that made my stomach churn with disgust. What kept me staring at the ceiling wasn't just the stolen money. It was their complete indifference, how they'd robbed me of my dreams without a moment's hesitation. I couldn't let this stand. I wouldn't. The next morning, I called the bank and requested complete transaction records. The file they sent contained 17 pages of activity. With a red marker, I methodically highlighted every suspicious transfer, my anger growing with each circle I drew. 2 transactions stood out, a $25,000 online banking transfer and a $45,000 cash withdrawal, both originating from an IP address matching my parents' home. I had used Eleanor's computer recently, but only to check my email and calendar, never my banking information. Someone had deliberately stolen my credentials and waited for the perfect moment to strike. That weekend, I returned to my parents' house, presenting the appearance of a regular visit. The familiar smell of pot roast filled the air, but tension hung heavier. Lizzie sat at the head of the table, deliberately avoiding eye contact. Nathan lounged with unnatural casualness, pouring drinks as if nothing was amiss while family photos smiled down from the walls. I placed the transaction records on the dining table. I've reviewed every transfer from my account, I said, my voice steady despite the rage burning inside me. All unauthorized transactions came from Mom's computer. I never logged into my banking there. So who took my information? Silence fell across the table. Eleanor studied her salad with sudden fascination. Richard hid behind his newspaper. Only Lizzie spoke, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You keep your passwords in your notes. It's not like we hacked anything sophisticated. I met her gaze directly. So you admit stealing from me? She shrugged, touching the necklace I'd given her at graduation. You've always helped before. What's the big deal now? I didn't consent to this. There's a difference. Nathan set down his glass with practiced nonchalance. Always so dramatic, Vanessa. This isn't theft, it's family taking care of each other. No, I countered firmly. Help is requested and freely given. This was theft, plain and simple. Eleanor finally looked up, her voice condescending as if explaining to a child. Vanessa, you live alone with your successful career and no real responsibilities. Lizzie has 2 children. Nathan's between opportunities. Family means sharing resources. Sharing resources means draining my entire architectural firm fund without asking? My voice trembled with hurt, not anger. Richard folded his newspaper, visibly irritated. Don't be harsh. You've always been the responsible one, the only one strong enough to handle these situations. We trusted you'd understand. Trusted me. I laughed bitterly. You stole my personal information and emptied my account. That's not trust, it's exploitation. Lizzie slammed her hand on the table, losing her composure. We didn't waste it on frivolities. Sophie's private school deposit, Max's therapy, our mortgage payment. I'm completely drained, she shouted. You're drained? I looked at each family member with newfound clarity. I worked 60-hour weeks designing that community center while paying off your credit cards. I skipped the London Architecture Conference to cover Nathan's rent. I ate ramen for weeks after paying Mom's overdue property taxes. I've been exhausted for years but never complained because I thought family meant something. All I did was enable your selfishness. Only the kitchen clock's methodical ticking broke the silence. I stood, gathering my evidence and purse. At the doorway, I paused to address Eleanor. If this is how you treat the only person who never asked you for a cent, don't be surprised when I start taking back what's rightfully mine. Nathan laughed mockingly. What are you going to do, Vanessa? Call the police? I met his gaze with newfound strength. Just wait and see. Then I walked out of my childhood home, feeling not regret but powerful resolve blooming in my chest. I arrived home as dust-painted Boston's skyline in deep blue and purple. The air felt heavy, matching the righteous anger still simmering inside me. At my desk, I opened my laptop and pulled out an organized file folder that had been years in the making. For years, I'd meticulously preserved every receipt, message, transfer confirmation, and screenshot, not from paranoia, but from an architect's instinct for documentation that someday my silent sacrifices would require evidence. I began organizing everything chronologically, from the first payment of $250 for Lizzie's emergency childcare 3 years ago to the largest, $12,500 transferred to Nathan for temporary financial difficulties when he lost his job. The amount that had funded my professional certification exam, postponed twice already. Over 3 nights, I constructed a detailed spreadsheet, categorizing each transaction with an architect's precision. Green highlighted medical expenses, yellow for housing costs, and red for questionable purchases, like the $3,200 Nathan spent on a home entertainment system last Christmas. I remembered it vividly because I'd skipped the Chicago Architecture Biennale to make my student loan payment that month. Monday morning, I walked into the Cybercrime and Financial Fraud Task Force headquarters, carrying printed documents, a USB drive with my spreadsheet, and a formal complaint. Detective Diane Reynolds, a seasoned investigator with steel gray hair, reviewed my evidence carefully. "This isn't merely a family dispute," she stated firmly. "This constitutes significant financial fraud and unauthorized access to private accounts. I need the names of all involved parties. Lizzie Walker, Nathan Walker, Eleanor Grant, my mother, and Richard Grant, my father," I replied, my voice unwavering for the first time in years. I left the building beneath cloudy skies, feeling not vindictiveness but the lightness of finally standing up for myself. 2 weeks later, during a client presentation, my phone lit up with an unknown number. Excusing myself, I stepped onto my balcony to answer. It was Diane. "Ms. Vanessa, our investigation is complete. We have substantial evidence to proceed with formal charges. Officers will visit the subject's residences today." I felt an unexpected wave of relief rather than satisfaction. Someone finally recognized what I'd endured all these years. That evening, my phone erupted with calls, Eleanor, Lizzie, Nathan, in rapid succession. Text messages flooded in, "Call your mother immediately." "What have you done, Vanessa? How could you involve the police?" I silenced them all. Later, my former neighbor texted, "3 investigators from financial crimes are at your parents' house right now. They asked about you." Next morning at the architecture firm, I noticed curious glances as I entered the elevator. My supervisor approached cautiously. "A reporter called about a financial investigation connected to you," he said, his hand supportive on my shoulder. "We didn't confirm anything. Do you need time off?" I smiled with newfound confidence. "I'm okay. I'm finally doing what's right." That night, watching city lights shimmer across the harbor, Lizzie's words echoed, "This family only survives because of you." They had survived because of me, yet never saw me as a person, just an endless resource to exploit. But that resource had finally found its voice. I opened my design journal and sketched a simple line, "I am not the family ATM. I am Vanessa." For the first time, I viewed my name detached from others' needs, just my identity, my profession, and my freedom finally within reach. The first message arrived Monday morning as I was reviewing blueprints for work. My phone screen illuminated with a familiar notification, "Call me Eleanor." I ignored it. An hour later, while pouring my coffee, her voicemail played through the speaker, "Vanessa, this has gone too far. I understand there were misunderstandings, but involving authorities is excessive. Please call me back." I set my mug down, a cold sensation spreading through my body. Her voice maintained that same soft, manipulative tone, as if stealing my life savings was merely a minor disagreement. By noon, Lizzie sent a rambling text, "My accounts are frozen. Sophie's private school is threatening to remove her. Max can't attend his therapy sessions. You win, okay? Does ruining our lives make you happy now?" That last line made my stomach clench. As if I had started this game, as if they were innocent bystanders dragged into my vendetta. But I knew the truth, I wasn't trying to win. I was finally refusing to lose anymore. The following day, Detective Diane called with updates. "Ms. Grant, we've confirmed the full amount misappropriated. Lizzie faces charges for unauthorized transfers, Nathan for accessing accounts from unregistered devices, and your parents for using the funds for mortgage fraud. Asset recovery proceedings have begun. I felt a strange hollowness, not from their consequences, but from their continued inability to understand how their actions led here. That evening, Nathan called repeatedly. I blocked his number. Minutes later, an email arrived from an unfamiliar address. Vanessa, please. I've been suspended from my job. They're investigating all my finances. I can't lose everything over one misunderstanding. Can't you tell them this was a family matter? His previous smugness and mockery had vanished, replaced by transparent desperation. I felt nothing. Thursday morning brought a rare message from Richard. The bank issued a foreclosure notice. We have 30 days before losing the house. I read it multiple times. No apology, no acknowledgement, just a cold statement with the clear expectation that I would, as always, solve their problems. I didn't respond, but that night, watching city lights reflect across my window, I remembered all the architectural conferences I'd skipped to wire Eleanor money, the professional development opportunities I'd declined because Lizzie needed immediate help with Sophie's expenses. I'd sacrificed not just my finances but my peace of mind and professional growth. This time was different. That weekend, I drove to Cape Cod, where Richard and I once sketched beachfront structures when I was developing my love for architecture. No one knew my whereabouts. No one asked how I was coping. The very people who called me their foundation now only reached out to repair their crumbling lives. Mid-afternoon, Eleanor texted again. Vanessa, I'm begging you. I acknowledge I was wrong, but losing our home would destroy me completely. Please don't abandon your family now. I stared at those words, feeling my chest tighten, not from guilt, but realizing that even now, she worried about the house, not me. Not one person had asked if I was okay. Setting my phone aside, I walked along the shoreline, letting the Atlantic breeze carry away the heaviness I'd carried for years. I'd entered the hardest phase, where they'd label me heartless, ungrateful, even cruel. But it was also where I finally stopped carrying burdens that were never mine to bear. Gazing at the vast ocean, I realized I wasn't thinking about transfers, emergency loans, or midnight crisis calls. For the first time in years, I was thinking about my own life and the peace slowly blooming inside me. Without telling anyone, I filed for an extended professional sabbatical. I packed my essential belongings into a rented SUV and left Boston on a misty Thursday morning, driving westward across the country. With each state line I crossed, I felt myself shedding the suffocating weight of family obligations like an architect demolishing a structurally unsound building. I arrived in Denver, Colorado, a city I'd briefly visited years ago during an architectural conference. During that trip, I'd only managed a few hours to explore downtown, sketching in a sunlit cafe while jazz played softly in the background. The creative energy and freedom I'd felt that day had lingered in my memory. Now, it would become the foundation for my new life. I leased a minimalist loft apartment with mountain views, clean white walls, floor-to-ceiling windows that captured the morning light perfectly. Within days, I'd arranged my drafting table by the largest window, filled the space with architectural books I'd always wanted to read, and for the first time, designed a space exclusively around my needs, not reserving areas for family emergencies or last-minute visitors. I changed my phone number and informed my firm I'd be working remotely while exploring independent projects. Almost immediately after cutting financial ties with my family, my creativity surged. I slept deeply, ate mindfully, and when I sat at my drafting table, design concepts flowed with unprecedented clarity. Just 3 weeks after settling in Denver, Marta, my mentor from the Boston office, called. Vanessa, I've reviewed your community center concept drawings. They're revolutionary. Have you considered launching your own boutique firm? I have contacts here who would back you. I gazed at the mountain range visible through my window. A year ago, such an opportunity would have been impossible. Eleanor's utility bills, Lizzie's childcare costs, and Nathan's endless temporary situations would have anchored me to financial servitude. Now, watching sunlight illuminate the snow-capped peaks, I answered with certainty. I'm ready. Marta laughed warmly. I knew you'd say that. Let's make it happen. After our call ended, I brewed myself a cup of chamomile tea, wrapped myself in a handcrafted blanket on my balcony, and let the mountain air caress my face. I'd broken free from that destructive cycle, where I perpetually gave while no one ever asked, "Are you taking care of yourself, Vanessa?" No more 2 a.m. crisis texts. No more desperate pleas disguised as temporary requests. No more scrutinizing my accounts each morning with quiet dread. Now, my messages came from people who valued me, colleagues excited about design concepts, old classmates reconnecting, and new friends I'd met through a mountain biking group. No one asked for financial bailouts. They simply inquired, "How's your day going?" Or "Would you like to join us for dinner at that new place downtown?" I hadn't merely found freedom from financial exploitation. I had rediscovered my true self. One crisp autumn afternoon, I returned to the downtown Denver cafe where I'd first sketched this city years ago. I sat at the same corner table overlooking the street. The owner approached with a spark of recognition in his eyes. "You've been here before, haven't you? The architect who was fascinated by our exposed beam ceiling design?" I smiled. That was me. And now I call Denver home. He gestured toward the mountains visible through the window. "Something about this landscape helps people rebuild themselves." I nodded, understanding perfectly the unspoken truth in his words. That evening in my studio, I opened my design journal and wrote, "I spent my career constructing perfect spaces for a family that never wanted to experience my creations, only extract their value. Now I've sealed off that blueprint and am designing solely for myself." This new existence wasn't flashy or dramatic. There were no grand openings or ribbon-cutting ceremonies. But it was peaceful, and that tranquility had become the most precious luxury I'd ever possessed. I couldn't predict what tomorrow might bring. I didn't know if Lizzie might someday call, her voice unsteady with genuine regret. But I was certain of one fundamental truth: I wasn't returning to that life. Not because I didn't care for them, but because I'd finally learned to value my own foundation first. One golden October morning, I stood on my balcony watering the row of succulents and herbs I'd planted, when my phone chimed with a new email notification. Minutes later, sipping my coffee at my drafting table, I noticed an unfamiliar name in my inbox: Catherine Chen. I needed a moment to place her. Catherine was Lizzie's friend from college, a quiet, thoughtful woman I'd met briefly at a few family functions where she'd always remained in the background. The subject line read simply, "Thank you, Vanessa." Intrigued, I opened the message. "You likely don't remember me well. I'm Catherine, a friend of Lizzie's from her college days. You once helped me draft resume layouts when I was job hunting, and you drove me home after Sophie's 5th birthday. I've remained silent for years, believing I had no right to speak. But after hearing about your stand, how you established boundaries, I felt compelled to reach out." Every word resonated deeply within me, like ripples across still water. I've been trapped in a similar pattern. My family designated me the successful one, which meant I was expected to provide for everyone. I worked architectural internships during days and waited tables nights, while still sending money home for my parents' mortgage and my brother's failed business ventures. When I finally attempted to refuse, they called me selfish and ungrateful. Learning how you chose self-preservation illuminated a path I never knew existed. You showed me that establishing boundaries isn't cruel, it's essential self-protection. It's preserving what's irreplaceable, your own well-being. I sat motionless, my coffee now cold between my palms. Outside, the Colorado wind scattered crimson maple leaves across my view of the mountains. Within me, something profound was quietly blossoming. It wasn't satisfaction or vindication, it was the profound relief of being truly seen and understood. Catherine wasn't the first. Weeks earlier, a former architecture school classmate had messaged after seeing my new firm's website launch. "I always thought you were simply indestructible, needing no support. Now I understand, you appeared so capable that everyone presumed you could withstand anything indefinitely." Those words had resonated profoundly because for years, I'd never demanded recognition. I remained silent, contained everything within. No one had taught me that compassion doesn't require sacrificing your boundaries. That evening, I composed my response to Catherine. "I never imagined my actions would resonate with someone else this way. Thank you for your courage in sharing this. Remember, you're not alone or selfish, you're simply learning to value yourself appropriately, which is fundamentally necessary." As I pressed send, everything crystallized with perfect clarity. I hadn't lost my family, I was redefining what family truly means: people who love unconditionally, give without expectation, and respect others as complete human beings. The following dawn, when I drew back my curtains, sunlight streamed into my studio like liquid gold. I breathed deeply, feeling weightless for the first time in years. I was no longer the Vanessa who always accommodated, who remained silent to avoid causing discomfort. I had become Vanessa who understood when to say enough and when to walk away from those who couldn't value me properly. The most beautiful realization: I wasn't alone. Somewhere, people like Catherine were finding courage to step from shadows into light. If my journey illuminated even a fraction of their path forward, then every moment of pain I'd endured had served a greater purpose after all. On a bright Sunday afternoon, I wandered along the brick pathway winding through Denver's Cheeseman Park, where the maple trees displayed their spectacular autumn transformation from emerald to gold to blazing crimson. A young girl pedaled her bicycle with wild abandon, her laughter trailing behind her like music, while her father jogged alongside, calling out with affection, "Careful around the corner, sweetheart." I stopped, clutching my architectural sketchbook and coffee, absorbing this simple moment like a perfectly composed watercolor. Something stirred within me, a weightlessness I hadn't experienced in years. I once believed my worth depended on making my family proud. I designed flawlessly, saved obsessively, postponed vacations and personal projects, all to earn Eleanor's fleeting approval or hear "good sister" from Lizzie's lips. Yet they never paused to ask, "Are you exhausted, Vanessa? Do you need someone to listen?" They simply required my stability. When I finally established boundaries and said enough, they labeled me selfish and ungrateful. Those accusations once terrified me. I feared being cast as the villain, dreaded severing the family connections I'd sacrificed everything to maintain. But now, with the desperate texts silenced and the manipulative guilt trips faded, I recognized a truth so fundamental it ached. I hadn't lost my family, I'd rediscovered myself. This Vanessa, the woman I am today, designs her life according to her own blueprint. I embrace small pleasures previously set aside. I mastered structural sketching techniques I'd always admired. I purchased a bold red statement coat I'd once considered too assertive for client meetings. I joined a mountain biking group simply because the exhilaration of movement through mountain trails made me feel present and alive. I transformed my loft space, hanging an oversized geometric canvas across from my drafting table, not because it complemented the color scheme, but because its lines and angles spoke to me. One morning, I received a message from Marco, a former colleague who had established his own architecture practice in Barcelona. His words read, "Your courage to establish professional boundaries inspired me to finally open my own studio, something I've envisioned since graduate school but never believed possible. Thank you, Vanessa." I displayed his message near my treasured collection, a piece of rose quartz from my first Colorado hiking trail, pressed wildflowers from the mountain meadows, and my leather-bound portfolio filled with dreams no longer postponed. Each item represented a facet of this Vanessa who no longer needed external validation. I stopped anticipating my family's understanding. I ceased waiting for Lizzie's apology or Eleanor's moment of self-awareness. Perhaps someday they'd recognize the damage they'd caused. Perhaps not. Either possibility was acceptable. I once believed love meant perpetual sacrifice. Now I understand that sometimes love means release, allowing yourself and others the freedom to face consequences. When you stop erasing your boundaries to accommodate others, you discover that those who truly value you would never expect you to diminish yourself for their benefit. An architectural professor once told me, "You don't have to demolish your foundation to build someone else's home." When I stopped compromising my structural integrity for their expectations, I discovered that genuine warmth comes not from self-immolation but from the serenity of authentic living. Along that leaf-carpeted path, I moved unhurriedly, without urgency, without apprehension, without regret.